first things first, when we're talking about this data that you were a part of, reporting greenhouse gas emissions in the state, tell me, what were your guys' main findings? I know that you guys released that today. So what did you guys find?
Well, we compared and contrasted emissions over the last 5 years, and we documented a significant reduction in Georgia's total carbon output, which is great news. And it is occurring at the same time that the economy is growing. So that makes a double dividend. We can grow our economy and we can do it more cleanly.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. And tell me, I know that you guys, found that everything was going down except one sector. So please, if you could explain, why compared to other forms of emissions from vehicles remains the same and hasn't moved.
Yeah. So, on the good news side, we have reduced the carbon intensity of electricity that we're all consuming. And we use so much electricity in buildings that the built environment is really where much of the good news comes from. So you're correct. We have some not so good news coming from transportation. In fact, the whole sector of transportation has graduated to be the largest carbon emitter in Georgia today. The issue is that we continue to use diesel and gasoline in our cars and in our trucks. And while you and I are driving a little less because of COVID and work at home and all of that, we've had a lot of deliveries on the ground for us. So, the important storyline is that we need to be sure that our trucks especially become more efficient.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. And I guess when you guys were comparing this data, what was the last year that you guys compared it to?
So we're looking at the year 2017 through the year 2021. So it's a 5-year span, but it's not the very most recent data. I am pretty confident that the year 2022 will show much the same. We have taken a peek at some preliminary numbers, and I think the storyline is unchanged.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. And then I had a follow-up question when it comes to, car emissions. I know you said transportation has stayed the same, so it hasn't moved at all. Is that what you mean? Like it's just stayed where it was last time you guys?
No, we are emitting more emissions from, in particular, heavy-duty vehicles, and we're not reducing at all from passenger cars, SUVs, or light-duty trucks.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. And you said the biggest, and this is just for me to clarify, so you said the biggest issue is transportation, and one of the biggest things are diesel and these trucks, correct?
Yeah. Of course, we have opportunities to electrify our own passenger cars and SUVs too. I don't mean to ignore that. That's a great opportunity. We are becoming the Detroit of EV production here in Georgia. Our economy growing so fast, partly because of these great investments that are occurring in the electrification industries, including EVs and solar and heat pumps and batteries. But we're not, as a state, leading the way in adopting these technologies for our own use. We're providing them for others. So hoping that can be a focus of the administration and the state's planning going forward.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. And I know that, a follow-up question on what you said. I know that in the Axios story, and, you just said it, like in Georgia, we have a lot of resources and we have a lot of electric vehicle plants. We're selling, electric vehicles here. But I guess why you mentioned that we're producing them for other people, or I guess other states. Is that why, maybe consumers aren't buying into them? I guess why do you think that Georgia has, our green gas emissions when it comes to transportation have stayed when we have so many resources in the state? Why do you think that's so?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the primary motivations for going green with electricity and electric vehicles for cars is the environment. And while we are finally, as a state, recognizing the importance of cleaning up our air and the difficulties of climate pollution. We just don't have the same investment enthusiasm that other states do. For EVs, it's not too bad. We're about at the national average. About 7% or something like that of our car purchases today are electric in Georgia, and much more in California, of course, and elsewhere. But that's about the average. But we're way behind on other things, like we're 43rd on rooftop solar. And we are behind every single contiguous state in the adoption of heat pumps per capita. So, we have a ways to go. We're not at the bottom in everything. And I do think we are an educated and appreciate the environment here in Georgia. It's just not translating into purchasing.
Of course. And Dr. Brown, why do you, why do you think that's so? Is it, I guess, when we're talking about electric vehicles, I know you said we're about average for the amount of people that have them here versus other states. Do you think that's because of the cost? Because people, are unsure that it will work? I guess, why do you think people aren't purchasing these things that you just mentioned?
Well, I can tell you from surveying that we've done, they're reluctant to pay the extra upfront cost, even though the life cycle cost of owning an EV is no greater than the cost of owning a traditional passenger car. It's just that upfront initial boost. So access to capital, alternative priorities, and that those are some of the couple of concerns.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. And I know you said access to capital and priorities as some reasons. What do you mean when you say access to capital? What does that mean specifically?
Well, to get an EV, you pretty much need to buy a new car. Although if you are of moderate means, you can get a federal rebate to purchase a used electric car for the first time ever. New rebates are now available. I guess I'm meaning that you've got to pay more, several $1,000s more for the electric version of a particular model year, car. And it will take you a couple of years to pay it back. But, when you run that car, you're going to be paying so many fewer dollars per equivalent gallon when you go electric, and it gets paid back within just a few years. So maybe it's not having the confidence that will happen. You don't have enough friends and neighbors to talk to who can help you become more confident in your decision making. We have to get more buzz around this because I've had an EV for about 8 years, one of the original Priuses, and also a Nissan Leaf. So I talk about it all the time. We just maybe need more buzz.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. And then I know you mentioned, I guess apart from EVs, I apologize if I'm asking the same thing. I just want to make sure I understand it. You said, transportation, EVs, that plays a role, but then with trucks and such, and diesel, I guess, what are ways to fix that transportation gas emission issue? Is that something that state government has to go into? I guess, what do you think are the solutions?
Well, I think that for the heavy duty trucks, the options are much more limited. So there aren't very many electric options for large, 16 wheelers, let's say. They can go though with natural gas, for instance, which is cleaner, and you could do even green natural gas, which increasingly companies are committing to, like UPS, as opposed to electrifying their trucks because the availability is not there yet. So I suppose it's I call it maybe a supply chain problem at the moment for the large trucks, not so much for passenger cars. You can get yours.
What would you tell people? Why should they care about this? Why is this important to them?
Principally, you should care about our carbon footprint because we're impacting the climate. The climate is becoming warmer and it's becoming more severe. So we have more flooding and droughts. We have more winds and hurricanes. So it's only going to get worse. We need to tackle it sooner rather than later.